Welcome to the Women in Fire radio show. Today we'll be talking about with our presenters from our Women in Fire conference, leadership conference. I'd like to thank Fire and Engineering for allowing Women in Fire to be part of the radio show. I'm Lisa Baker, retired battalion chief and the Southwest Region trustee. So, like I mentioned, today I'll be speaking with some of our presenters who will be at our leadership conference held at FDIC, which will be on Monday, April 15th. It'll kick off with the opening ceremony, followed by a lineup of educational classes that will provide training, support, and advocacy for not only women in the fire service, but men as well. So I'm very excited with the panel I have today. We have some excellent instructors with us. So our next speaker will be Jada Hudson Moorfield.
Yeah. So my name is Jada Hudson, and I am a therapist. I work exclusively with first responders in Wheaton, Illinois, which is about 30 miles from Chicago. And my presentation, there's a lot of overlap here, and I can't wait to catch some of your presentations. They sound fabulous. So my presentation is on basically how to reduce rates of PTSD with a certain type of leadership style. And I call it the guardian leadership style. So I don't care who you are and how old you are. When you experience something that is very stressful and overwhelming, maybe something you've never experienced before, you're going to be looking for a parental-like figure. And that person has to know more than you, and they have to care about you. And both of those ingredients must be present in order to reduce the rates of PTSD with this type of leadership style. And I think people become leaders for maybe different reasons, right? They become leaders to make more money, to get more respect, maybe different types of duties. But hopefully that there is just this one element that they want to be this parental-like figure. They want to mentor, and they want to have this like guardian style that I'm talking about. So it's really about, like many of you have said, it's about creating attachments with each firefighter that you're in charge of. And I really do mean authentic attachments. Because, for instance, if an incident, goes down, it's too late if you have not built an authentic attachment to say, how are you doing? I'm worried about you. That's not going to work. It's not going to work unless you've already built those authentic attachments beforehand. So this presentation is actually just a fraction of the normal presentation. My normal presentation, I do go in depth into symptoms and diagnosis of PTSD, which I'm not going to be able to do in the time period that I'm given. And then I go into how to develop authentic relationships in terms of empathy, training, communication style. But I'm not going to really go into that either. But those are all elements. And hopefully some of the other presenters will get into some of those topics. So again, when there's a bad incident, you can't fake an authentic relationship. And this is really, there's a lot of science behind this. It's about regulating your nervous system. There is concrete science that authentic relationships can modulate and regulate your nervous system. When your sympathetic nervous system is overreactive, having an attachment with someone, again, who cares about you and who knows more than you will regulate that nervous system and get it back down to baseline, ultimately reducing your rates of PTSD. So these attachments that I'm talking about with your leader can return an individual to a sense of safety. And I'm literally talking about a state of safety chemically in the brain with the neurotransmitters and your sympathetic nervous system again. It's about knowing your firefighters so well on an individual level that you would know when a particular incident has impacted them, maybe for personal reasons, something they're going through at home. And then you can identify as a leader when something is wrong. So there's hard science that shows that social support or the lack of it is one of the most powerful predictors of PTSD. And there was a study done in 2008 where they took two groups of women. They shocked them, electrically shocked them while monitoring their brains. And half of the women had their spouses holding their hands. The other half did not. They were alone. And it actually showed less fear reactivity in the brain with the women who were holding their spouse's hands. So chemically, this isn't just something like, again, a feel-good thing. There is chemical science behind authentic relationships, reducing rates of PTSD, as well as regulating the nervous system. I'm also going to go into training, and in particular, how to achieve a challenge appraisal versus a threat appraisal. A challenge appraisal, you go into an incident thinking that I have all the resources, both internally and externally, to get this job done. And it's an uncertain success, but I have everything I need, including the resources of my leader that cares about me. A threat appraisal, you go into an incident avoiding harm. And that's two very different things, right? And so I go into how to create trainings to create more of this challenge appraisal versus a threat appraisal. And again, I'm talking about chemicals, because if you see something as a challenge, you secrete more adrenaline, and adrenaline is proven to improve your performance. You will have a better performance, a better outcome, the more adrenaline you secrete. If you see something as a threat, you're going to secrete more cortisol. And cortisol is going to inhibit your performance. You're going to have a worse performance if you see something as a threat and you start to secrete more cortisol. So in a very particular type of training environment where you hit a sweet spot of making the trainings challenging, but not too challenging and not too boring. So, and that's very hard to do. I've talked with a number of fire departments here in the Chicago area, small and large, including Chicago. And so, this aspect of training, it's different for every department. And I welcome some conversation in my presentation of ideas, because it's much easier to do at a smaller department where you know everyone and you know their ability levels, and you can create sort of that unique training environment on an individual basis. So I talk a little bit about how to set up trainings at the sweet spot that I'm talking about. And I'm also talk about how to create a physiological toughness through exercise, which can also create a challenge appraisal to an incident. So I'm talking military, special ops, Green Beret kind of thing, where you are training your body very strenuously under very strenuous conditions. And you're literally, it's more than getting your body strong and tough. It's about training your nervous system. So you're training your nervous system, again, to reach this chemical level that I'm talking about of this adrenaline and increasing your performance. So it's about having a very stressful condition. This is what the military does, right? They train these very stressful conditions. You have a sense of control, and then you follow that with an adequate recovery. You can also do this with HIIT training. So you can do that with the high intensity interval training. So working super hard and then resting. And you're actually training and regulating your nervous system to be able to work very hard and then master, the chemicals in your body. So I talk a little bit about that. And then finally, I think some of the other presenters maybe have hit on this a little bit, but a task versus relational leadership. So you can't be relational all the time. If you're going into an incident, going into a fire, you can't be relational at that time. You have to work on your task orientation. So you have to work on your SOPs, you have to do your standards, you have to do basic quick command language and get the job done, right? Very practical things. But you also, just like, firefighters have to flip that switch on and off all the time, you have to flip to the relational side too, which is more of that empathy for somebody, getting to know somebody, taking the time to have those conversations. And there's specific times before, during, and after an incident that you have to switch back and forth to these different leadership styles. And finally, I'm going to touch a little bit on psychological safety and how important it is in your fire department to have people feel comfortable to express themselves. At least, you know, everyone doesn't have to agree, because you are going to get the best creative problem solving out of them if they feel psychologically safe just to at least express their opinions. So there's definitely a lot to cover. I'm looking forward to presenting this year, and I'm looking forward to having conversations with different leaders from all over the world.
Thank you for that information.